Good morning, evening, or afternoon, whichever one's going on for you at this current point in time. Yes, I'm in the same clothes because this is kind of a part 2 or 3 to doing a couple things to my water tank or water heater tank. So in here, I've already resected all the insulation and whatnot, but I've taken the lid completely off. Let's get some light in here. We're gonna see the top of the tank, and if you check in there, you can see that there is a black fitting here, but this right here is a 1 1/16 socket, and this is what's going to take off. Let me get you in there. That little nub right there, see that, the top of that bolt head or nut head? That is your sacrificial rod, your anode rod. That is what controls, as the name would suggest, sacrificing itself in order to keep the rust and all the buildup that happens in your water and in your tank over time. It begins to rust itself over the years, and then every few years you should be changing them because they are sacrificial. They're made to be replaced because eventually, once they're completely chewed out, eventually the rust will start coming for your tank itself, and then you're just going to see leaking, whether it's lower end, on the side, around the fittings, it'll just start leaking, and you will need a new water heater. Instead of replacing them over and over, just maintenance your own. It'll last, 10, 15, 20. Some people have the original water heater for the place and they're still kicking. Now you can use a regular ratchet, right? Just get the right bit, or I should say socket. The standard size is 1/16, 1 1/16, and I use a little extension just so it's a little better. But I'm going to be using my M12 right angle impact because what I love about this thing is it actually has the automatic setting at the bottom here, and that means that once it senses that the nut or bolt is loose, it immediately stops. Even if I'm squeezing the trigger all the way down, it will stop. So first, get in there. If you're going to use a socket and a ratchet by hand, you can give your tank a little bit of a hug and then make sure that it has enough torque for you to get it. You could use a breaker bar or a longer ratchet, whatever gives you better leverage so that you're not struggling. Now if you see a little bit of water coming out, immediately get your power tool away. Carefully, you're going to pull out that rod, and you can see, once I fully pull it out, it has been through some things. But this is much better than this happening to your water heater at home. There are some people that will leave it and there's almost nothing left of it. This is actually, some would say, not in the worst shape in the world. That little end of it is essentially what it gets down to. Also, in case I didn't preface this, your hot and cold valves should be closed. I didn't think I had to say that, but just in case. Taking a closer look at my rod, giggity, if it's at its core, then you want to change it. This still has some meat on it, of course. You should be checking this rod every year or two. And depending on how hard the water is in your area, luckily down here, we have pretty decent water. If you find that it's just the core, some people just have this little nub left because the rod is completely eaten out. Then it will start going for your tank. Your tank will start to bubble up. You'll start seeing rust spots from the inside. If you look, actually have my camera in the tank, seeing a top side down view of my tank, you can clearly see in the center is the heating element. Of course, there's going to be some surface rust. 10 years down the line, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, that's just going to happen. Natural reactions that happen in water. But if you look past it to the bottom of the tank, normal calcium, normal metal deposits, that's just going to happen. That's just wear and tear of the tank. Looking externally, if I switch the camera to a side view, you can see no holes, no perforations, just normal wear and tear of a tank. Pretty impressed by this. So based off of what I've seen from my tank, it's really a flip of a coin whether I want to replace it or not. I know this will not be the death of me. Given that there's minimal sediment at the bottom of my tank, I know that it's going to be in good condition until I can find a replacement. I'm going to show you how to get your new one back in, assuming you went out and got a replacement. Typically, your normal 50, 60 gallon tanks are going to be available everywhere for anode rods and any other fittings that you might need. But these smaller tanks are sometimes annoying, where they either have like the RV style ones, which might be like 8 inches, and then they have the full size like 5-foot rods. Whether you just check your rod and it's fine, or you have your replacement, either way, you want to make sure before putting on any PTFE that your threads are completely clean, no dust, no debris. Make sure you're wrapping very tightly. You want to make sure that it gets into every thread. They do sell PTFE in the 3/4 inch. I just happen to have 1/2 inch. That's just what I got on hand. So make sure it's threaded properly. And if you're going to use the pipe dope, make sure your manufacturer says it's cool. Usually it is, but you never know. Some manufacturers are picky. Be cautious not to touch anything with that pipe dope except for the threads. As you put it back in, there may be some water that's getting displaced up and out. That's perfectly fine. Once you start threading down, you want to make sure it's hand tight first. It is a tight spot, so I can't really get you in there. One sec. Next, I'm coming in with a hand ratchet because you do not want to kill these threads. You just want it snug enough. I've seen some people come in with an impact driver or impact wrench and destroy threads. Remember, these tanks are going to be with you a while. You might want to take care of them. Once you get to a really tight point, do not be wrenching from the end with these ratchets. You want to be putting topside pressure, nice and smooth. Once they're hand tight with this ratchet, that's it. If they are leaking from the threads eventually, you will know, because you're not going to put everything together and walk away. You're going to slowly pressurize the system and make sure the area is dry so that if it's leaking, you can tell. Start with the hot, open, cold, fully pressurized. There's no leaks. This water is residual displaced water. I'm going to grab that with a paper towel in a second, but the main thing is that you check for leaks before you go anywhere. Now in my case, I put the power back in. It's heating up. Allow your water to get to its hottest point. Use it for a little bit. See if there's any fluctuations in pressure, and then check your fitting. And that's all there is to it. Now the 3 most common types you're going to see, technically 2, is the standard bolt style, which you're going to see here. It's just a bolt head, 6-sided, and that contains your anode rod. It is its own entity. The second one is going to be a pass-through in the hot side of your water heater. It's basically 2 sides that have threads instead of a bolt head. You're going to thread them in with a pair of pliers, and the top threads are going to be for the connection that goes to your home, and the bottom side is going to actually thread into your tank. The third style is just the original bolt style, but instead of them being out in the open or having a little recessed inlet for you to get your socket into, it's going to be a plastic cap. So be on the lookout for those. They should all be treated the same, so every year or 2 you should be checking that rod. If it looks like it's worn away, beat up, and completely chewed apart, then you need to replace it. For the sake of bad smells in your water, your tank literally rotting away, and 3, some people report a yellowing to their water as well. This can also help with that. I'm going to put everything back together. Did that look cool? I don't know. Anyways, 1 million years later, everything's back together. The water's tested. We're done here. Now with your water heater, you should be checking your sacrificial rod once a year or once every 2 years, and then changing it every 3 to 5 years, depending on how hard the water is in your area. Luckily, we have pretty decent water, so as you can see, my rod is beat up, but it's still intact. And that is how you change the anode rod or sacrificial rod on your water heater, regardless of what it is, regardless of how long it is. They all do the same thing. Have confidence in what you're doing, but if you don't feel super confident, stop what you're doing, don't make more damage, and talk to a professional. With that being said, I'm out of here, and until next time, work smart.